They say life can change in the blink of an eye. For Alexander Reid, it changed in the screech of twisted steel and shattered glass. It was a late November night in New York City. The air was sharp with the kind of cold that slices through even the thickest coat. Alexander's black Bentley glided down Fifth Avenue, its tinted windows shielding him from the world outside. He was a billionaire, a man who had built his empire on finance and technology, respected and envied in equal measure. The city bowed to him, or so he thought. But that night, the road didn't care about titles or fortunes. In a moment of spinning headlights and broken metal, Alexander's world was torn apart. When he woke in the hospital, the sterile light above him burned like judgment. His body felt foreign, heavy, unresponsive. The doctor's words landed like bullets. "You'll never walk again, Mr. Reid." He tried to move his legs. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. Panic surged through him, but before he could process it fully, another blow struck, one far crueler than paralysis. Victoria, his wife of 25 years, entered his hospital room with no tears in her eyes. She was dressed elegantly, as if on her way to a gala, not visiting her broken husband. In her hand, she held a folder. "I can't do this, Alex. I can't live like this." She placed the folder on his bed. Divorce papers. For a moment, Alexander thought he was hallucinating, that this was some fever dream brought on by painkillers. But her heels clicked against the tile as she turned to leave, her perfume lingering in the air, more suffocating than the hospital walls. She took his fortune with her. Every loophole in the prenup had been exploited. His lawyers later explained that she had been preparing for months, maybe years. But she left him one thing, or rather, one person. Their daughter, Sophie. At 13 years old, Sophie was Alexander's only true treasure. He thought she would be his reason to fight, his anchor in the storm. But grief has a way of silencing even the strongest bonds. Back home, the Reid mansion in Manhattan became a gilded cage. The place was cavernous, every room echoing with memories of a life that no longer fit. Marble floors gleamed under the dim light, cold and unwelcoming. The whisper of the wheelchair lift became the soundtrack of Alexander's existence, each mechanical whine a reminder of his limitations. He tried to run his empire from his home office, conference calls, market decisions, endless reports. But behind the polished mahogany desk, he felt small, powerless. His voice carried through speakers to boardrooms across the city, but inside, his heart was as paralyzed as his legs. Sophie tried, in her quiet way, to reach him. She would bring him drawings she made at school, little stick figures, her, him, and once even Victoria. Alexander would glance at them, mutter a distracted, "That's nice," and set them aside. Each time, a little more of Sophie's light dimmed. Nannies came and went, their footsteps fading down the marble hallway as quickly as they had arrived. Some left because of Alexander's cold bitterness, others because of Sophie's silent grief, her refusal to speak more than a few words. It wasn't just Alexander who had been broken by that crash. Then she appeared. Maya Carter was not like the others. She was a young medical student, not much older than 22, working part-time to pay for her studies. Her resume was thin, her experience limited, but something about her stood out to Alexander's assistant when they hired her. The first time Alexander saw her, he dismissed her instantly. She walked into his study carrying Sophie's school bag, her long brown hair tied back, her clothes simple and unassuming. She didn't look like someone who belonged in his world of glass towers and luxury cars. But Sophie, his silent, grieving daughter, looked at Maya differently. She smiled. It was the first smile Alexander had seen on his daughter's face in months. Maya didn't hover like the others. She didn't pity Alexander, didn't speak to him in hushed tones as if his wheelchair had made him fragile. Instead, she treated him like a man, sharp, stubborn, and very much alive.
"You know," she said one morning while setting Sophie's breakfast on the table, "wheelchairs don't define people. Attitudes do." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "And what would you know about it?" She met his glare without flinching. "My brother spent 2 years in one. Doctors said he'd never walk again. Now he runs marathons." Her words cut through him. He wanted to dismiss her, to retreat into the bitter silence that had become his armor. But something in her tone, steady, defiant, refused to be ignored. Days turned into weeks. Maya's presence in the house grew. She cared for Sophie with a warmth that was genuine, not performative. She laughed with her, read with her, sat on the floor building Lego castles until Sophie's laughter echoed through the mansion's halls again. For the first time in years, Alexander heard joy in his home. But Maya didn't just bring Sophie back to life. Slowly, she turned her attention to him. "You've built corporations from scratch, but you've given up on yourself. Why?" Alexander bristled. "Because this," he gestured at his legs, unmoving, lifeless, "is permanent. There's no fixing this." Maybe not completely, but strength isn't only about walking, it's about refusing to let life end just because it changed. Her words stung because they were true. Somewhere beneath the bitterness, Alexander knew he had surrendered. He had let his accident, his wife's betrayal, his own pride bury him alive. And for the first time, a flicker of something stirred inside him, a dangerous, fragile thing: hope. The first session was brutal. Maya wasn't a licensed physical therapist, but she knew enough from her brother's journey. She guided him through basic exercises, stretches that seemed almost insulting to a man who once commanded boardrooms and built skyscrapers. "Lift your arm," she said. It trembled. He cursed under his breath. "Again," she insisted. Day after day, she pushed him. Week after week, his body groaned, his muscles burned, his pride shattered. But little by little, movement returned. A twitch in his hand, a flicker in his thigh. Each tiny victory felt like a miracle, and with every step forward, the walls around his heart began to crack. But hope has enemies, and for Alexander Reid, the past refused to stay buried. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when Victoria returned. She arrived in a sleek black car, stepping out with an umbrella held by her chauffeur, her lawyer trailing close behind. She looked as flawless as ever. Diamond earrings, designer coat, her lips painted the color of blood. She walked into the mansion as though she still owned it. "I'm here for Sophie," she said coldly, handing Alexander's assistant a folder thicker than the divorce papers had been, "and for what's rightfully mine." Custody battles, business claims, legal threats. Victoria had come back to finish what she started. And just like that, the fragile new life Alexander was building, with Sophie, with Maya, with hope, was under siege.
The storm had arrived, and her name was Victoria Reid. Alexander sat in his study, the rain streaking down the wide glass windows behind him. Across from him, Victoria's lawyer spread documents across the polished oak desk, his tone professional but sharp. "Mrs. Reid is seeking full custody of your daughter, Sophie," he said. "She also intends to claim shares in Reid Global that she believes she is entitled to." Alexander's jaw tightened. Entitled? His voice carried the quiet rage of a man who had lost too much already. "She abandoned this family the day I couldn't walk, and now she thinks she can come back and take my daughter?" Victoria didn't flinch. She sat elegantly, legs crossed, a smile playing at her lips like this was a game she had already won. "I didn't abandon her, Alex. I abandoned you. There's a difference," she said coolly. "And let's not forget, Sophie needs stability. You can't provide that from a wheelchair." Those words stabbed deeper than any knife. Alexander's hands clenched the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white.
For years, he had avoided facing the one truth he feared the most, that his disability made him less in the eyes of the world. But before he could speak, Maya entered the room. She had Sophie's school papers in hand, her face bright with the simple glow of someone who had just helped a child with her homework. She stopped cold when she saw Victoria. The air in the room turned to ice. Victoria's eyes narrowed, scanning Maya like a hawk. "And who might you be?" Maya straightened her shoulders. "Maya Carter. I helped take care of Sophie." Victoria let out a cold laugh. "Of course, another babysitter, though you seem a bit young for the role. Tell me, Alexander, is this how low you've sunk? Surrounding yourself with charity cases?" Maya's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. Alexander's temper flared. "You don't get to walk in here and insult the people who've actually stayed. Maya is worth 10 of you, Victoria." For the first time, Victoria's smile faltered. Her eyes flicked to Maya again, this time with something darker in them. Jealousy, suspicion. The war had begun. In the days that followed, Reid Global became a battlefield. Rumors spread through the financial world. Whispers of Alexander's declining health, stories of boardroom disputes, speculation that Victoria was staging a hostile takeover through legal claims. Alexander tried to hold steady, but the pressure mounted. Every call with his lawyers, every headline, every glare from Victoria chipped away at the fragile strength he had rebuilt. At night, when the city went quiet, he found himself staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was right. Could he really be a father to Sophie? Could he lead a corporation when half his body no longer obeyed him? But every morning, Maya was there. She guided him through his agonizing physical therapy. She forced him to stretch when he wanted to give up, to push when he wanted to collapse. One morning, his hand twitched as he tried to grip the edge of his desk. It wasn't much, barely a movement, but Maya's eyes lit up as he touched it. "Did you feel that?" she asked, excitement breaking through her calm tone. Alexander looked at his hand, trembling but alive. I think I did." It was hope, fragile but real, and Maya celebrated it like he had just won a marathon. That day, for the first time in months, Alexander felt something he hadn't dared to believe in, possibility. But with hope came fear. Late one evening, as Maya packed away Sophie's school books, she caught Alexander staring at her. Not just looking, staring, like a man trying to memorize someone he was afraid to lose. "Maya," he said softly, "why are you here?" She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "You're young, you have a life, dreams, med school. You could be anywhere, doing anything. Why stay here? Why stay with me?" Her expression softened, but her answer was firm. "Because I see a fighter who forgot how to fight. Because Sophie needs her father, and because..." She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone once believed in my brother when nobody else did. That belief saved him, and I won't walk away from you when I see the same fire in you." Alexander felt something shift inside him. For months, maybe years, he had lived in darkness, convinced he was nothing but broken pieces. But in Maya's eyes, he wasn't a cripple or a failure or a man trapped in a wheelchair. He was someone worth saving. It terrified him because it meant he had something to lose again. Victoria saw it too. She began showing up at the mansion more often, always under the guise of visiting Sophie, but her eyes lingered on Maya, her comments cutting, sharp as glass. "Careful, Alex," she said one afternoon, her tone dripping with venom. "Women like her don't stay. They come for the fairy tale, but they always leave when reality sets in." Maya stood her ground. "I'm not here for a fairy tale, Mrs. Reid. I'm here because your daughter deserves better than a mother who treats her like a pawn." Those words hit Victoria like a slap. Her face froze, but her eyes burned with rage. From that day forward, she doubled her efforts in the custody battle. The tension bled into Sophie's world. She became quieter, retreating into herself as the adults around her ward war. At school, teachers reported her grades slipping. At home, she hid in her room, afraid that every laugh with Maya or every smile for her father would become ammunition in the fight. One night, Alexander wheeled himself into Sophie's room. She sat on her bed, clutching a stuffed bear she had outgrown years ago. "Talk to me, Sophie," he said gently. "Tell me what's going on in that head of yours." Her eyes filled with tears. "What if they take me away from you, Dad?" The question shattered him. He reached for her, pulling her into his arms. His legs may not have worked, but his arms were strong enough to hold his daughter. "They won't," he whispered fiercely. "I won't let them. You are my everything, Sophie. No judge, no lawyer, not even your mother can take you from me." For the first time, Sophie let herself cry against his chest. And Alexander realized something. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for her. But Victoria's tactics grew darker. At a corporate gala where Alexander made his first public appearance since the accident, she cornered him in front of investors and board of members. Cameras flashed, microphones pressed close, every word recorded. "Alexander," she said sweetly, loud enough for the crowd to hear, "how long do you plan to pretend? Everyone knows you can't lead Reid Global from a wheelchair. It's time to step aside, for Sophie's sake." The humiliation was unbearable. Whispers spread like wildfire. By the end of the night, headlines screamed, "Is Alexander Reid unfit to lead?" Back at the mansion, Alexander collapsed in his chair, his hands trembling with rage and shame. "Maybe she's right. Maybe I can't do this anymore," he muttered. Maya knelt in front of him, forcing his eyes to meet hers. "Don't you dare," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Don't you dare let her win. You survived more than most men ever will. You've built empires from nothing, and you still have Sophie. She believes in you. I believe in you. Isn't that enough?" Her hand covered his, steadying him. And in that moment, Alexander realized he didn't just want to fight back. He needed to. For Sophie, for Maya, for himself.
The conference room buzzed with anticipation. Rows of reporters filled every seat, their cameras poised, recorders ready. The lights were harsh, hot, unblinking. Alexander Reid sat at the long table, his wheelchair angled at the center. He wore a navy blue suit, tailored perfectly, his tie knotted sharp. For the first time in years, he looked less like a man broken by tragedy and more like the titan who once ruled New York's skyline. But inside, his heart thundered like a war drum. He wasn't here to talk about quarterly earnings or mergers. He wasn't here to feed the headlines with stock tips or business forecasts. Today, he would risk everything, not for profits, but for truth. A hush fell as the moderator introduced him. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alexander Reid." Cameras flashed. Alexander leaned forward, gripping the edge of the podium. His hands shook slightly, but his voice, though trembled at first, rose clear. "Doctors saved my life, but one person saved my soul." A ripple of confusion moved through the room. This wasn't the speech they had come for. 2 years ago, I lost more than the use of my legs. I lost hope. My home became a prison. My company became a burden. And my daughter nearly lost her father, even though I was still alive. He paused, searching the crowd. For a moment, the world seemed to fall silent. But someone refused to let me stay in the dark. She saw me, not as a cripple, not as a failure, but as a man worth fighting for. Her name is Maya Carter. She is not my nurse, not my assistant, not my employee. She is my miracle, and I will not lose her. The room erupted, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, pens scratching furiously. "Are you stepping down as CEO? Is this a personal announcement or a corporate one? Mr. Reid, are you in love with Maya Carter?" Alexander raised a hand, silencing the chaos.
I will answer your questions about Reid Global another day. But today is about something greater. This is about courage. This is about love. This is about second chances. For the first time in years, he didn't feel small. He didn't feel broken. He felt alive.
That night, when Alexander returned to the mansion, the atmosphere was heavy with expectation. His assistant tried to brief him on the media fallout, but he waved it off. None of it mattered now. Because there, standing in the foyer with Sophie at her side, was Maya. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. She had seen the press conference. She had heard every word. "Why did you do that?" she whispered. Alexander wheeled closer, his chest tight with the weight of everything he wanted to say. "Because I spent too long hiding behind walls. Because I let Victoria and my accident and my own fear convince me that I wasn't enough. But you, Maya, you reminded me that I am still a man. And I love you." The silence stretched, fragile, trembling. Then Sophie broke it. She ran forward, wrapping her arms around Maya's waist. Her voice, small but steady, carried through the room. "Mom?" The single word pierced through Alexander like sunlight after endless night. Maya's tears finally spilled, and she knelt to hold Sophie, her arms enveloping the girl who had been waiting so long to feel whole again. Alexander's throat tightened, and that moment, he knew. Wealth, power, titles, none of it mattered. This was what he had been searching for. A family, a future, love born not of convenience, but of courage. But the story was not finished. Victoria returned once more, this time furious, her lawyer trailing her like a shadow. She stormed into the mansion, waving court documents in the air. "You think some speech changes everything? You think declaring your love for a glorified babysitter makes you fit to be a father?" Alexander's eyes hardened. "No, Victoria. What makes me fit is the fact that I never gave up on Sophie. You walked away when it was hard. Maya stayed when it was impossible. That's the difference." Victoria's lawyer stepped forward, ready to argue. But Sophie's voice, trembling but fierce, cut through the tension. "I don't want to live with you, Mom. I want to stay here, with Dad and Maya." Victoria froze, her perfect composure cracking for the first time. Her daughter's words stuck deeper than any courtroom battle. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Finally, she turned and left, her heels echoing down the marble hallway. For once, her silence was louder than her threats. In the weeks that followed, the custody battle fizzled. Victoria's lawyers realized they couldn't fight a daughter's choice, especially not with the media now portraying Alexander as a symbol of resilience. Investors who had once doubted him rallied behind him. The board of Reid Global, inspired by his honesty, voted unanimously to keep him as CEO. But Alexander no longer measured his worth in stock prices or headlines. Each day, he continued his physical therapy with Maya by his side. His hand grew steadier, his legs, though still weak, twitched with stubborn determination. Every small victory felt like a promise that even if he never walked the same again, he would never stop fighting. At night, laughter filled the mansion again. Sophie's drawings now included 3 figures: herself, her dad, and Maya. No longer a nanny, no longer a visitor, but family. One evening, months later, Alexander sat by the window overlooking Central Park. The city glowed beneath him, alive and endless. Maya joined him, her hand slipping into his. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked softly.
Miss what? The man you used to be, before the accident. Alexander thought for a long moment. The skyscrapers glittered in the distance, reminders of his empire, his past life. But when he turned to Maya, when he heard Sophie's laughter echoing from the next room, he shook his head. No, he said firmly. Because I gained more than I lost. I lost my legs. I lost my wife. I lost my pride. But I gained you. I gained Sophie's smile again. And I gained the chance to prove that hope is stronger than wealth. Maya smiled, her eyes shining. Then that's all that matters. They sat together in silence, the kind of silence that didn't feel empty, but full. Full of love, full of promise, full of life yet to be lived. And so, Alexander Reid, the billionaire who had once lost everything, realized he had finally gained it all back. Not through money, not through power, but through the courage of one woman who refused to give up, and the love of a daughter who never stopped believing. If you believe in second chances, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, wealth can buy comfort, but only hope can buy redemption.